I never imagined my billionaire father's son could fail everything. Until a black janitor changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was warm, too warm for October, sunlight pouring through the tall office windows, casting long shadows on the polished floor. I was sitting on the edge of my father's intimidating glass desk, heart racing, hands trembling. Tied to my fate was the inability to meet the weighty expectations pressures that suffocated me like a tight, suffocating noose. There I was, a mere shadow of the Park Avenue prince everyone said I should be. My father had the world at his feet, success, wealth, untouchable power. But me? I was spiraling. Tests, presentations, even friends, I couldn't keep up. I felt like a ghost haunting the grand hallways of my own life. The whispers were loud: failure, disappointment. What's wrong with him? Then he appeared. The janitor. Arthur, a quiet man with a tired smile and kind eyes that hid deep stories within. His hands were calloused and worn. I always noticed him sweeping the floor, lost in his own world. He moved with grace, like he knew secrets I could only dream of understanding. One morning, I overheard him humming a tune, and it wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket, melting away my icy despair for a moment. As the days passed, things kept getting worse for me. The pressure mounted. The expectations soared. Each failed test felt like a nail in my coffin. I wanted to scream, to run away. I was drowning in a sea of judgment, anxiety clenching my throat. And yet, there he was, Arthur, keeping to his corner. One evening, as I stumbled out of the conference room ready to give up, I bumped into him. "Keep your chin up, kid," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Sometimes, you've got to pick yourself up, yeah? We all have our struggles." I was stunned. How could he say something so profound while cleaning up after those who thought themselves better? My mind whirred. His words resonated, vibrating through my chest. What if there was more to him? I peered into the depths of his eyes. What was he hiding? But before I could utter a reply, my father stormed in, face dark like a brewing storm. "What are you doing here?" He barked at Arthur, anger reverberating through the air like a whip. The fear flickered in Arthur's gaze before he masked it with the humility of his work. From that moment, everything changed. Seeing my father's scorn towards someone who I began to look up to infuriated me, but the dark intensity felt thrilling. Was I really that different? As I kept watching Arthur, I began to peel away the layers of my own identity. What did it mean to fail? What is success? Thinking of those questions, I fell into a routine. I watched, I listened, and I began to discover Arthur's world bit by bit. And just when I thought I understood him, or at least thought I did, he dropped a bombshell one night while cleaning. "You think you know everything about me, don't you?" His voice was low, filled with secrets yet untold. "But some truths aren't meant for everyone, especially not for you." Everything in me froze. My heart raced. What truths? What had Arthur seen? Could he know about my own demons? The way my failures loomed over me like a heavy cloud, ready to swallow me whole. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stood there, words caught in my throat, feeling the weight of Arthur's gaze pinning me down. What truths could a janitor hold that might shake the very foundation of my reality? I wanted to demand answers, to rip open the veil of his mystery, but something stopped me. Perhaps it was the fear that I would discover not only his secrets, but also the reflection of my own inadequacies staring back at me. "Arthur, what do you mean?" I finally managed to croak out, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, letting the silence stretch between us like an unbridgeable chasm. "You think your failures are the worst thing in the world? Listen, kid, my life has some pretty heavy shadows of its own." With that, he picked up his broom and resumed sweeping, the rhythmic sound echoing in the empty hallway. I desperately wanted to reach out, to break down the wall he had erected around him, but he was slipping away, deflecting my curiosity like a skilled magician. The next few days passed in a blur. The weight of my father's expectations grew heavier, an omnipresent reminder of my inadequacy. Yet, somehow, I couldn't stop thinking about Arthur. Each time I walked past the janitor's closet, I felt a magnetic pull, something deep inside me yearning to connect. One late evening, while the office was ghostly quiet, I found myself rummaging through my own thoughts, staring blankly at the papers strewn on my desk. Unable to shake the restless sieges of emotion, I wandered out into the hallway, determined to find Arthur. The janitor was in his usual spot, mopping the floor, a tranquil presence in the chaotic world around us. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say, but the words spilled out. "Why do you keep your secrets?" Arthur glanced up, an amused smile playing on his lips. "Secrets are like dirt on a floor, kid. Some want them hidden, but others," he gestured at the floor, "know that sometimes dirt tells a story." I sat down, resting against the cool wall. "What's your story then?" I asked desperately, seeking a lifeline from the connections that felt so out of reach. That he looked at me, eyes weary yet wise. "I've buried my past so deep, it feels like it would crush me if I ever tried to dig it up. People only see the janitor, the one whose job it is to clean up after others. They don't see the man who lost everything: family, dreams, hope. Some days, just getting through the next hour is a struggle." His honesty hit me like a punch to the gut. Here I was, lamenting my failures while he carried the devastating weight of loss. I wondered, for the first time, if my pain was a mere drop in the ocean of human experience. "Does it ever get better?" I quavered, vulnerability spilling from me like a dam had broken. He sighed, pausing in his work. "Better? It comes and goes, like waves. But you find a way to stay afloat, fighting against the current." The corner of his mouth quirked into a soft smile. "And sometimes, you discover those tiny acts of kindness can save you." His words resonated, illuminating the path I had been groping for in my darkness. As I left, resolve began to anchor itself within me. The next day, I approached my father in that imposing corner office, determined to have a conversation rather than be another echo of disappointment. But before I could speak, he dismissed me with a wave, too engrossed in a phone call to acknowledge my presence. The disappointment flared up like an open flame, igniting something inside of me. I stumbled backwards, words unspoken. The weight of his unalterable world bore down, and for a moment, I considered retreating into my invisible space. But memories of Arthur's insight surged forward, propelling me back. The week continued, a tempest of escalating frustrations and quiet resilience. I initiated small changes, attempting to carve my path amidst the expectations that weighed me down. I began standing up for myself and seeking the support I needed, but every small victory became an echo of stagnation, lifting my gaze only to meet barriers of constant judgment. And then came the evening of the big gala, a charity event meant to showcase my father's success. I stood in the mirror, adjusting my tie, feeling like I was suffocating under the weight of the suit that was supposed to fit the perfect image of the Park Avenue sun. Halfway through the event, a sudden commotion near the entrance seized my attention, a commotion I never expected. Arthur, in his janitor attire, entered through the grand doors, his presence exceptionally out of place among the gala's guests. My heart raced, a tide of anger and confusion flooding my veins. "Why is he here?" I murmured to myself, but it was too loud in my mind. Each whisper of the guests around me was deafening. I fought against the urge to act, but instinctively found my feet moving towards him. "Arthur, what are you doing here?" I called, only half hoping he would turn back. "Just cleaning up the mess," he said, his smile warm and knowing. But beneath the surface, something great was lurking. In that moment, time slowed. The room fell silent, eyes falling upon me, the heir whose lineage was intertwined with expectations now entangled with a man traditionally relegated to the background. My heart pounded against my chest. Just then, I spotted my father's furious expression, his disapproval like thunder rumbling in the distance, shaking the very ground beneath us. Staring down my fate, I felt the once comforting facade of success begin to crumble. As I stood teetering on the edge of confrontation, the emotional gravity shifted dramatically. In that solidly opulent space, my heart racing, I faced not just Arthur and my father, but the tumult of my own spiraling identity, and with it, The revelation that a single moment of unexpected kindness could crash into waves of profound change. Sometimes, kid, Arthur's calm voice broke through the heated chaos. The only way to find your truth is to stand under the very lights that blind you. And in that electrifying moment, I felt myself torn between the identities I wore and the truth I was yet to discover. I stood frozen, the cacophony of whispers and sharp gasps swirling around me like a tempest. The contrast between the elegant ballroom and the humble janitor's uniform worn by Arthur felt surreal, as if worlds had collided in a single moment. My heart raced, a chaotic drum echoing in my ears, drowning out the music that had moments ago felt like a suffocating backdrop. "Why are you here?" I exclaimed louder than intended, my voice cracking with an urgency that invited scrutiny. The shocked eyes of guests fell upon us, caught in the ripples of my confrontation. I could feel my father's glare burning through the crowd, a silent reprimand that sliced through the air. Arthur met my gaze with a steady calm, the smile from moments earlier replaced with something deeper, an invitation to confront not just the situation, but everything that lay beneath it. "I came to clean," he replied simply, yet there was an unspoken significance behind his words that resonated with me, chilling through the crowd's murmurs. "But this isn't your place," I whispered, a rhetorical question that lingered heavy in the air. A part of me wanted to protect him, to pull him back from the spotlight that was never meant to be his. Yet, there he stood, the stalwart janitor who had unknowingly become a lighthouse in my stormy sea. "Neither is this," he responded, gesturing subtly to the opulence enveloping us. A sea of designer dresses and polished shoes couldn't hide the tension crackling between us. My grip on my father's expectations tightened like a noose. Just then, my father stormed forward, his polished demeanor cracking at the edges, fury etched into his features. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice boomed, all sharp edges and rigid authority, as he glared down at Arthur like an interloper invading his empire. "Just doing my job, sir," Arthur replied evenly, an unwavering strength behind his words. "You don't belong here. You think sweeping floors gives you the right to step into my world?" My father's disdain oozed from every syllable, each word designed to sever the connection I felt with the janitor who had somehow become my confidant. "Maybe it's not about belonging," Arthur asserted, his voice ringing with quiet wisdom that caused the crowd to lean in, their collective breath held in suspense. "Maybe it's about fighting to be seen in spaces where you feel invisible." His gaze met mine, and for a brief second, the world around us dimmed, leaving only the truth that hung in the air, thick with shared pain that I was caught in the gravity of this moment. My father's world of perfectly curated expectations, glittering wealth, and relentless pride collided with the raw honesty that Arthur embodied. I felt the weight of years spent under my father's shadow bending me, but for the first time, a flicker of rebellion ignited within me. My battles felt trivial compared to the scars painted across Arthur's spirit. "Arthur," I finally said, my voice barely louder than a whisper as I turned to him, casting a glance toward the crowd still watching us, surprised by this unexpected confrontation unfolding before them. "I am sorry." The apology spilled forth raw and unrefined, a cascade of emotions I had buried for too long. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." An unexpected kindness bubbled between us, bridging the gap that my fears and my father's harshness had created. My pulse quickened, the pulse of truth tinged with a terrible longing to break free. "I'm here for you," Arthur reassured me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, a level of understanding that only someone who fought silently could possess. "This isn't about me belonging here. It's about you finding your voice." Before I could respond, the air shifted again. It was as though the very essence of the room had changed. An older woman, dressed elegantly, stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with defiance. "This man has every right to be here. Every person has a story worth telling," she declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "How can we claim to care for the community when we shun those who serve it?" Her words hung in the air like a healing balm, and though I had tried to rip myself free of my father's control, now I found him tightening his grasp on me. "Don't you dare take his side in this," he said, his agitation bubbling at the surface beneath the forced facade of control. Yet even now, with his storm brewing at my back, I felt a thread of courage emerging. Maybe it's not about sides, I said, my voice steadying with newfound strength. Maybe it's about understanding that we're all dealing with the weight of our own stories. I looked between Arthur and my father. Awareness dawning inside met his was not just a moment of confrontation. It was a pivotal crossroads. Suddenly, the grand chandelier flickered overhead, shadows dancing across the floor, and in that instant, I glimpsed the future nestled in the chaos of the present. Just when I thought I could truly seize my moment, something unexpected erupted from the crowd. A figure emerged, a man clad in a crisp suit, the very image of corporate poise. He approached, stepping between Arthur and my father, his expression twisted in concern. "Sorry to interrupt, Frank, but we need to talk. There's been a significant issue with the merger," he said, urgency wafting through the air like smoke. And just like that, my father's volcanic fury etched in stone faltered, vanishing into the realm of corporate crisis. The weight of expectation pulled away, leaving me with a void filled only by a nagging recognition of what was truly at stake. I didn't know how to navigate this moment. Things were spiraling, and the urgency of the unknown flooded my senses as I realized I had to decide which story I wanted to write for myself. The revelations about Arthur, my father's disapproval, and the unexpected intervention all coalesced into a singular truth. I had the power to alter the course of my life, but it came at an incomprehensible cost. I glanced back at Arthur. A silent understanding passed between us, a bond solidified through shared pain and the quest for belonging. I couldn't help but wonder as I stood there, heart racing, what the next move would look like as life poised itself on the edge of transformation. I could hardly breathe as reality swirled around me, the elegant ballroom dimming beneath the weight of truths half-spoken. The air was thick with uncertainty, leaving me standing at a precipice of decision. Arthur's steady gaze bore into mine, a quiet challenge nestled within it, urging me to step forward, to navigate this uncharted territory. "Let's step outside," I said, heart pounding against my ribs as I guided Arthur toward a glass door leading to the terrace. The night air was cooler, wrapping around us as we left the chaos of the crowd behind. The silver moonlight spread across the manicured gardens, a stark contrast to the turmoil thrumming in my chest. Once we were alone, I turned to Arthur, longing to bridge the gap that still lingered between us. "I didn't mean for you to be caught up in my father's world," I confessed, my voice a mere whisper. The stars above twinkled like distant dreams, each one a reminder of the weight of entitlement I had long carried. I used to think it was all I wanted. But now, my voice trailed off, the words heavy with uncertainty. "It's okay," Arthur reassured me, his calm presence a steadying force. "Everyone has a story, even you. You just have to learn to tell it." He took a step closer, a shared intimacy unfolding in the cool air. "But understanding it means facing the parts you don't want to see." I stared at him, a mix of admiration and fear rising within me. What if I've only ever known my father's expectations? What if who I am is entirely bound to that wealth and status? The question hung in the air, a reflection of the chains that bound me to a destiny I felt increasingly estranged from. Arthur shook his head slightly, a knowing smile crossing his lips. "You're more than just your father's son. Ulterior motives always flank people like him: ambition, status, the desire to maintain control. But they don't own you." His words pierced through the fog, yet I hesitated, the looming worry of familial loyalty casting a shadow across my heart. And sometimes, the hardest part of seeing who you really are is letting go of the stories we've always told ourselves. The remnants of the ballroom faded into the distance. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Do you ever feel like your story is the only thing left when everything else is stripped away? I searched his expression for understanding, voice trembling with vulnerability. I could lose everything if I chose to stand up against him. A flicker of compassion crossed Arthur's eyes. "But finding your identity is worth the risk, isn't it? Even if it feels like you're walking a tightrope, shaken and uncertain?" I nodded slowly, feeling the walls close in around me again, even in this moment of shared honesty. The possibility of breaking free echoed in the corners of my mind, daring me to take a step towards something uncertain yet liberating. "It shouldn't be this hard," I murmured, the unearned privilege of my life feeling like a weight around my neck. "Your pain is valid, he replied softly. It doesn't matter where you come from. It matters where you choose to go. But as I stood there, contemplating the precipice of choice, a sudden wave of voices spilled out onto the terrace from the grand doors behind us, the confidence of my father's steadfast allies cutting through the vulnerability of our exchange. Their laughter ricocheted off the terrace walls, betraying the narratives I had busied myself distancing from. The laughter soon morphed into veiled whispers, discussing the merger, their ambitions tangled in corporate overlordship, and quickly, my heart sank deep within me again. A figure stepped onto the terrace, half hidden in the shadow. There you are, he called out, unmistakable authority in his tone. It was Andrew, my father's right-hand man, his eyes scanning the area until he settled on us. Frank needs you. Now, before I could respond, dread pooled in my stomach. What do you mean? I asked, an involuntary tremor in my voice. The sudden pressure felt too intense, as if the world around us was collapsing back into place, suffocating my newfound resolve. Andrew sighed. Impatiently. It's a potential PR disaster. They're demanding a statement about the merger, and Frank wants you there. The urgency of his words knotted everything tighter around me, dragging me back to the confines of my father's world. As I stood there, torn between my father's demands and the liberating truth that had emerged from my conversation with Arthur, the gathered guests returned to the main area, their eyes glinting with expectation. Go, Arthur said softly, yet firmly, as he sensed my internal struggle. You know what you have to do. A chill swept through me, and in that infinite moment, I understood the profound risk of remaining in my father's orbit, an ever-spiraling storm of status and expectations. But that also meant distancing myself from the growing warmth of acceptance and understanding I had found with Arthur. He'll be back, I stammered, shrugging off the tendrils of regret that wrapped around my heart. A knot twisted within me, but the seed of hope clung tightly, urging me to seek my own voice beyond the suffocating hold of my father. As I walked towards the threshold, I risked one last glance back at Arthur, who stood there, both a reminder of the fight for authenticity and a harbinger of the uncertain path ahead. His quiet strength shone like a beacon, illuminating the way as my internal conflict threatened to engulf me entirely. But just as the door swung closed behind me, a voice rang out from the shadows, its icy chill freezing me in place. You think this ends here? It was my father, the edge of menace buried in his tone, cutting through the facade of control I had momentarily shed. He'll make sure everyone knows that your little encounter out there had consequences. My heart dropped as realization hit the weight of my choices, suddenly feeling perilous, my newfound courage suddenly dwarfed by the looming threat. How far was I willing to go to redefine my story, and would it be enough to withstand the repercussions that my father would surely unleash? The atmosphere shifted as the door slammed behind me, leaving the clamor of the ballroom fading into a distant echo. My father's words pulsed in my ears, a harsh reminder of the price I might pay for resisting the life had meticulously crafted for me. I was tethered between my family's expectations and the uncharted freedom I craved. The hall was brightly lit, a blinding contrast to the dim understanding I had nurtured on the terrace. As I moved deeper into the space filled with laughter and mingling voices, a deep sense of disconnection washed over me. My father, the mastermind behind the impending merger, stood at the heart of the room, his presence commanding respect and fear in equal measure. I had grown up watching how people cowered beneath his gaze. It felt suffocating to know I bore the same last name. Steeling myself, I approached him, every step heavy with the burden of unspoken truths. His eyes flickered over me, assessing, and I could feel the judgment simmering beneath the surface. There you are, he said, his smile a mask over the edge of ire. I hope you didn't let your little moment of reflection distract you from your responsibilities. That I swallowed hard, a wave of anger rising in my chest. I'm here, Dad. What do you need me to do? Let's keep this short, he replied curtly, motioning toward the cluster of executives waiting like vultures around the negotiating table. They need you to endorse the plan. Your face adds legitimacy. Your endorsement will quiet the media frenzy. Comparable to a marionette dancing on strings, I felt the life being pulled from me as he spoke. Do I endorse a future designed to appease expectations, or does my silence scream my own unraveling story? The tension in the air was palpable, pressing down on my chest until I couldn't breathe. Should I read the statement? I ventured, casting a glance toward the board members, their faces unreadable. Yet as I looked at them, I saw shadows of my own doubts reflected back, twists of ambition that whispered jealousy, greed, and at the heart of it, insecurity. Their approval meant nothing if I couldn't stand behind my words authentically. Andrew glanced at me with a knowing expression, but his support was a flicker in the overwhelming darkness. It's standard procedure. Just sign it, and we can move on. His words were deceptively simple, but I could feel layers of manipulation radiating from their tone. Before I could respond, my father leaned in closer, his voice low, a careful threat veiled in paternal tone. Disappointment is a powerful motivator, son. Don't make me remind you of what happens to those who don't uphold the family name. I flinched at the underlying promise in his words, consequences etched into his empty smile. The stakes felt heavier now, like chains I was sure would tighten around me if I attempted to break free. The chatter of the room buzzed around me, but all I could hear was the thrum of my racing heart battling the echoes of my father's ultimatum. Suddenly, a sense of rebellion surged within me. What if I don't want this anymore? The words escaped before I could think them through, a reckless outburst fueled by weeks of pent-up frustration. That a silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the soft clinking of wine glasses and the surprised gasps of nearby guests. Their glances darted between my father, whose expression froze in shock, and me, a mixture of defiance and dread coloring my cheeks. I felt evolved courage rise within me, but it was countered by the fear of who I might lose in the process. Are you implying that you have a choice? My father returned, incredulous, his voice dripping with disdain. You think this is easily discarded? This is your legacy. In that moment, as my father seethed, I caught a glimpse of Arthur at the edge of the ballroom, his eyes wide, absorbing my confrontation. I felt like a lighthouse shrouded in storm, flickering with the hope of the very certainty I was trying to grasp. I turned to face the assembled crowd, ready to let my voice carry beyond the walls of my father's influence. I don't want to be a puppet. I cannot pretend this merger aligns with my own beliefs when it feels forced upon me. A murmur rippled through the guests, surprise warping their faces. I felt free and terrified all at once. There was a moment of hesitation, an unspoken bond of solidarity forming in the air, but my father's seething anger was as palpable as the electricity arcing between us. Let's take this outside, he hissed, dragging me toward a side exit with a grip that felt suffocating. As we stepped into the chilly corridor beyond the ballroom, I braced for his reprimand. Instead, I was taken aback when I flicked my gaze to the end of the hall and spotted a lone figure in a uniform. Jared, the building's janitor, quietly pushing his cart filled with cleaning supplies. His face was impassive, but I noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he caught sight of my father's fury. Just a moment, my father muttered, stepping away to argue into his phone. Jared, hearing snippets of our exchange, looked at me, his expression conflicted. I heard what you said back there, he said softly, as if afraid my father would overhear. That took real guts. Thanks, I breathed, feeling a flicker of gratitude for the unexpected kindness. But you don't understand the consequences of standing up to him. His gaze held a sincere depth. Maybe not, but standing up for yourself is always worth the risk, no matter who your father is. A swell of gratitude surged within me. Before I could think twice, I took a small step closer. You don't know how much I needed to hear that, he nodded, a ghost of a smile patting his features. Be brave and follow your heart. Maybe that's all you really have left. I met his eyes, and hope unfurled within me again. Could it be this simple? As my father's voice rose in anger behind me, another realization struck, a realization that jolted through me like electricity. I could lose everything I had ever known, but in that loss lay the potential for rebirth, for creating a new path rooted in authenticity. Just then, the sound of someone rushing toward us broke through my thoughts. Andrew appeared, his expression frantic, eyes darting between the two of us. We have an emergency. They're threatening to pull out of the deal. The world narrowed with Andrew's words, the reality of my choices coming to bear. Would I abandon my fight now, retreat back into my father's shadow? Or would I stand strong, hear my own voice amid the chaos rising around me? As the looming shadows of consequence spread, I could feel the stirrings of rebellion deep in my soul. This wasn't just about the merger anymore. It was a defining moment, the birth of a new narrative, but was I ready for everything that might follow? With my heart pounding and my resolve crystallizing, I turned back toward Arthur's waiting presence, only to find that he had vanished back into the ballroom, leaving me standing at the crossroads of decision. But could I follow through alone, without the steady reassurance of his gaze at my back? Would I stand firm in the face of adversity, knowing what lay ahead might tear me apart? The door of uncertainty loomed, and as I prepared to step further into the unknown, a new emotion began to bloom within me, a fleeting sense of liberation mixed with dread that warred for dominance within my heart. Little did I know that stepping through that threshold would entail consequences greater than my father's wrath, forces uncharted cast shadows that threatened to bring even more chaos into my life. I looked at Jared one last time, that small ember of hope ignited. Maybe, just maybe, amid the steep cost of authenticity, resilience could sprout from the burn of betrayal and the flickers of heartache. It was time to own my choices, to carve my destiny, even if it meant embracing the darker edges of my newfound freedom. But little did I know that the crisis brewing around my family, entwined with my fight for identity, would lead to an even more shocking revelation, one that would rip apart the very fabric of loyalty I had clutched onto for so long. The air hung thick with tension as my choices spiraled around me like leaves caught in a gust, and the distance between my father and me felt as wide as the ocean. Andrew's urgent words reverberated in my mind, but my heart raced down a different path, one that was tinged with an intoxicating blend of fear and exhilaration. Where did Arthur go? I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper, desperation coating the words. He had been my anchor in the tumultuous storm my life had become, but now the unforgiving waves crashed yet again. That I don't know. He must have gone back in to calm things down, Andrew replied, his eyes darting around nervously, signaling something deeper beneath his surface. We need to go. Now. My heart sank. Andrew's urgency ignited a flicker of concern. What do you mean? I asked, not understanding the magnitude of what was unfolding at the negotiation table. The words hung thick in the air that surrounded us. What's really at stake? Before he could respond, my father returned, his demeanor still suffused with anger, but now tinged with something darker, fear. They're not backing down unless we give them what they want. And that means you need to play your part now. I glared at him, the distance once filled with trepidation slowly morphing into defiance. I am not a prop for your legacy, father. Not anymore. Let them walk. You think you can just throw everything away? His face twisted, the anger seeping through the cracks of his facade. You have no idea what you're playing with, the power dynamics, the stakes. This isn't just about us or our family name. This affects thousands. And you think your little fit of rebellion matters? I stood firm, each beat of my heart reverberating within me, every sentiment coalescing into something resolute. I'd rather bear the weight of my choices than be a mere pawn in someone else's game. Yes, I understand. And I understand that I'm not prepared to betray myself for something I don't believe in. For a heartbeat, we were suspended in time, the room fading around us until it was just us, the storm in both our eyes, a mirror reflecting years of confrontation, expectations, and the tug-of-war between love and obligation. Then, like a dam breaking, he lashed out. This is not just a deal. It's our survival. The world rushed back in, and with it, the escalating emotions that pushed against the walls of my resolve. They were right, everything was aligned against me. As memories flashed through my mind, off dinners spent beneath the harsh glare of my father's expectations, of school years molded by his ambitions, fear crept back in, wrapped like a vice around my thoughts. I won't stand by and let you do this. I stammered out, each word cracking like thin ice, knowing full well that my defiance could fracture whatever tenuous bond we still shared. You're condemning us. You're condemning yourself. His face twisted in a mix of fury and desperation, and at that moment, my heart ached with a realization I never wanted to confront, the fear of losing everything. But as his words echoed, another fragment of hope stirred within me. Through it all, the brief exchange with Jared lingered, reminding me that sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. I took a steadying breath, determined to reclaim the narrative of my life, that a sudden commotion from within the ballroom caught my attention. The glass doors of the terrace flung open, exposing a cascade of panicked whispers spilling forth. My heart dropped as I caught sight of Arthur stumbling out into the corridor, his face pale, eyes frantic. "Did you hear?" His voice rose above the confusion. "There's something you need to know about the merger, about people involved, Arthur." My gut twisted. "What is it?" "It's not just about corporate interests. Someone's threatening to expose." He hesitated, trepidation crackling in the air. "Someone's been keeping secrets. Secrets that go beyond just business deals." "What kind of secrets?" My father's voice quivered slightly as he peered past me, searching Arthur's face for clarity, the cracks in his control beginning to fracture. "They're planning on outing your father's connections to high-profile deals that weren't just business. They were arranged through less than ethical avenues." Arthur's voice dropped. Each word weighted with implications that clenched around my heart like a vice. The silence that blanketed the corridor was suffocating, a thick chill coating the space. I glanced at my father, his expression shifting from fury to bewilderment, and suddenly, every ounce of fear and anger I had felt toward him was eclipsed by a growing curiosity, fueled by my own sense of betrayal. Did he know? Had he been too caught in his ambition to realize the fragile threads tying his empire together were fraying right before our eyes? My heart raced as I pieced the implications together, leading me to unexpected crossroads of compassion and dread, the realization that fear begets desperation, and desperation could incite irreversible actions. "Arthur, what do we do?" I asked, my voice faltering yet anchored with newfound resilience. A growing sense of urgency infused the air around us, as if I was standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into a churning abyss, wondering only where it would lead me. My father let out a strangled breath, his visage shifting further as realization crept in. "We speak with the board," he said, tension threading through his voice. "We need to regain control, but do you understand what that would mean?" I challenged, unable to suppress the tremor. "You've built everything on such fragile foundations. If you move now, it only strengthens the whispers. This could unravel everything." His gaze dimmed, torn between the impending collapse of his world and the fear of being exposed. As we stood there, uncertainty crackling in the air around us, I became keenly aware that my life was no longer bound by his ambitions. A tumultuous revelation deep within the core of my being began to unfold. The very essence of family ties, loyalty, and integrity was at stake. Those foundations weren't just about business. It was about trust woven through the most complex fabric of our lives. And with that clarity came the unmistakable realization that being unshackled from my father's ambitions meant confronting everything I had ever known. The daunting path ahead twisted like a serpent in the grass, full of hidden dangers waiting to strike. But just as I prepared to take my first step onto this uncertain terrain, the harrowing sound of shattering glass echoed from inside the ballroom, carving out a resounding silence that gripped use and omen of the chaos that awaited. Before I could respond, or even process the weight of that sound, Andrew suddenly turned, his expression frozen. "We have to go? Now." As I looked back at my father, the winds of fate swirled around us, pulling strings tied to our past, and, just as quickly, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The choice remained mine, but it was a choice fraught with consequences I had yet to comprehend. That in that moment, surrounded by uncertainty and fear, I realized what lay ahead could unravel more than deals. The very core of our existence teetered on the edge. Would I choose to embrace this tumultuous journey toward truth? Or would I retreat, shackled once more by the weight of expectation? As we surged forward, I knew I had a long way to go, and the echoes of shattered glass rang louder than ever, heralding the truths yet to be unveiled, truths that would forever alter the course of my life and those intertwined with mine. The corridor felt like a tunnel stretching into darkness, and as we sprinted toward the ballroom, every footfall echoed the gravity of choices looming just out of reach. Adrenaline coursed through me, and the uncertainty of my father's empire and the unraveling secrets tightened around us like a noose. "Arthur, what happened?" I managed to cry out, desperate for clarity amidst the chaos swirling in my mind. He didn't have time to answer. We burst through the glass doors, and the scene inside was far more chaotic than I had imagined. Guests were in various states of turmoil, some gasping in confusion, others shouting as the reverberating sound of shattering glass had sent them into a frenzy. The air was thick with panic, a cocktail of fear and disbelief electrifying the atmosphere. I caught sight of my father stepping back, his face pale as he looked past the flurry of distractions toward the center of the dance floor, where a gaping hole in the ornate chandelier hung precariously low, shards of crystal raining to the ground. It was an omen, cruel and foreboding, as if the very symbol of his empire was crumbling above him. "Get everyone out." My father barked the order, a flicker of control seeping back into his voice. Yet the command felt fragile, thin enough to snap at the slightest pressure. The way tension stretched before a breaking point, guests scrambled. My breath quickened, the urgency of the situation pressing down on me. Andrew, still next to me, was scanning the room, his brow furrowed with worry. "We need to find out what caused this. If it was deliberate, we could be in real trouble." My heart sped, a wild rhythm echoing the fears nestled inside me. Just then, I spotted Jared in the crowd, his usually calm demeanor shattered, as he tried to help an older woman who had fallen to the ground. There was something undeniably noble about him, a reminder that even in chaos, people looked out for one another. "Jared," I called, weaving through the crowd toward him. In that moment, I yearned for some connection amidst the chaos consuming my life. He glanced up, surprise flickering in his eyes before he remembered the older woman. "She's fine, just shaken. But we can't stay here." He stepped toward me, grasping my arm as if to anchor me. "You're okay, right?" "I'm fine," I reassured him, though my heart battered against the walls of doubt constricting me. "Have you seen Arthur?" A little frazzled, he joked nervously, his attempts to lighten the mood only sharpening the knife of reality. "He's probably cornered whispering about conspiracies." "Good," I sighed, my laughter tinged with anguish. "I think we need him." Amidst the disarray, I caught sight of Arthur, his figure darting back and forth at the edge of the dance floor, was speaking frantically to my father, gestures wild, eyes alight with trepidation. "Andrew, let's move," I said, pulling Jared with me, the urgency of the moment eclipsing my fears. I had to protect what little family structure I had left, even as the world threatened to unravel completely. As we reached Arthur, he turned to me, an urgent expression swirling within him. "They're threatening to expose your father's dealings. If this chaos draws attention, his entire network collapses. Maybe it's a distraction, a ploy," Andrew shot back, glancing toward the ballroom entrance. "How do we know it's not intentional?" My father's face was taut, washed with a wave of recognition, but doubt clouded his eyes. "Focus. We need to find out who's behind this before it culminates into something worse," he ordered, the authority in his voice strained yet evident, a man desperately clinging to the remnants of his power. I watched my father, this titan of industry, and for the first time, I was torn by the sheer vulnerability written in the lines of his aging face. "What are we going to do?" I asked, my voice a whisper fighting against the encroaching din. "Stay together, no matter what." "Follow me," he instructed, the captain of a ship slowly sinking beneath the waves, yet with each word, his resolve still flickered. Just as we were about to move, a hush fell over the ballroom, a shroud of uncertainty as the glass doors swung open violently. And in walked a figure that sent shockwaves coursing through the room. As if the air itself had thickened in response, the company's public relations officer, Claire, flanked by two intimidating security guards. "Ladies and gentlemen," she shouted, her voice piercing through the room. "We have an urgent matter to address. It has come to our attention that there may be a scandal unfolding." My heart lurched. I could see my father's expression shift, every moment crushing him further as the finality of exposure loomed before us like a guillotine blade, poised to fall. "Linked to the merger discussions and its associates," the words hung in the air. I was struck by a terrifying revelation. What if Claire was the very leverage that could turn the tide against my father? The stakes were higher than I ever imagined, and we were caught in a web of deceit thicker than ever. And just as panic threatened to rise again, she continued, her gaze landing directly on my father. "We need to dispel the rumors swiftly. We all know the truth can be more harmful than," but she never completed her sentence. In that pivotal moment, one of the security guards made his move, gripping her arm like a vice. The room watched in stunned silence. The atmosphere crackled with gasps and whispers, and then it began. Guards wrestled against panicking guests, urging them toward the exits as Claire's voice was lost amidst the chaos. My heart dropped, uncertainty flooding through me like ice water. The boundary between ally and foe was fracturing before my eyes, and I realized in that split-second burst of clarity there was no escaping the reckoning we were all about to face. The truths hidden beneath layers of lies were shifting, and no one would emerge unscathed now. Andrew barked, breaking the spell, as if he could see the collapse spiraling around us, pulling my father with it. We turned to flee, but before I could move, a figure caught my eye, a fleeting shadow slipping through the chaos. It sent a jolt of recognition through me. But who was it? Could it be a friend or enemy? As I fought against the desperate urge to turn back, the familiar, stern voice of my father rang out, rooted in panic at the front of my thoughts. You must choose. Are you with me in this? Will you protect our family, or will you let this expose everything we've built? Caught on the precipice of monumental choices, my heart thundered, wisdom swirling in the storm as I realized our standing together now marked the ultimate test of loyalty. Would I stand by him, even as dark truths clawed at our lives, or would I forge my path into the unknown, ready to confront the chaos before me? In that single breath, everything I knew teetered at the edge of collapse. And as I took the first step away from the devastation and toward a future I couldn't fathom, I knew none of us would leave this night unbroken, and the secrets waiting in the wings were only just beginning to unravel. As we stumbled from the ballroom, a jarring pressure clamped around my chest, threatening to suffocate any remnants of resolve I had. My father's panic-stricken expression, paired with Andrew's unyielding determination, left me straddling a chasm of uncertainty. Each decision felt like a riddle wrapped in paradox, the weight of potential betrayals clawing at my thoughts. Arthur, come on, I urged, as we darted down a narrow corridor away from the ballroom's chaos. The urgent rhythm of our footsteps echoed off the ornate walls, ornate gold plating glimmering with a mocking beauty amidst the pandemonium. Where are we going? Arthur gasped, trying to keep pace. Panic radiating from him only deepened my own despair. I'd always imagined we'd share moments of strength together, but now he was just another link in a chain of turmoil binding us tighter with each frantic beat of our hearts. Anywhere but here, I said, desperation lacing my voice. We need to regroup. We need to figure out next steps away from this mess. Just as we reached an unguarded stairwell leading to employee offices, I hesitated. Was I caught in a rush of flight, or had I started to look forward? It felt surreal, the thrill of the chase battling with the agony twisting my insides. There was a time when I would have reveled in the accolades of this world, yet here I was lost, gasping for clarity, desperate for stability amidst this descending chaos. Wait. Arthur halted abruptly, turning to me. I need to tell you something. My stomach fluttered with unease. The sincerity in his eyes demanded my full attention. What is it? It's about Claire, he whispered, glancing over his shoulder, as if her shadow might loom nearby. I saw her meeting with someone just before the event. Someone high up in your father's company. My gut twisted at the implication. Are you sure? He nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration, conflicting emotions warring within him. They were discussing things that could ruin your father. I don't know if it was related to tonight, but she seemed. He faltered, searching for the right words. She didn't seem loyal. A shiver slipped down my spine. Traitors were everywhere, lurking beneath polished facades. My heart raced as I tried to process his words. So we can't trust anyone, not even ourselves, he replied, anguish etched into his features. We are all players in a game we didn't choose. Just then, Jared burst through the stairwell door, panting as if he had been chased by ghosts unseen. You guys, you need to see this. In his hands was a small tablet, the screen illuminating his anxious face. What is it? I asked, a new dread creeping over me as I approached. Jared swiped at the screen, revealing a live stream from the chaos still unraveling upstairs. People were clamoring, news reporters had descended, and across the screen flashed headlines: billionaire empire in turmoil. Insider exposes dark secrets. My heart sank. How could things deteriorate so quickly? My father's voice echoed through the feed, attempting to suppress the chaos. But the sweat on his brow said it all was unraveling. Do we need to act now? Andrew broke through the tension, sharp and urgent. If we don't stabilize the narrative, ITLL bury your family.no. I blurted out as dread pooled in my stomach, mingling with bitter fear. If we expose truths, ITLL destroy everything. This empire it's built on lies that I don't care. Andrew shot back, his frustration glimmering like sharpened glass. We'll be swept away by the debris if we don't face this head-on. We can't hide anymore. Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, sending jolts of fear through our collective vein. It was followed by an ominous Shoyuta security officer, addressing us in no uncertain terms. "Hey, you need to vacate the area." Panic erupted again, swirling in a cyclone of decisions as we darted back toward the staircase, hearts pounding like army drums. The hall stretched like an infernal tunnel feeding our rising tension. But just as we turned the corner, I nearly collided with a man with a janitor uniform, gray and weary. The tension of the moment fractured, a small flicker of humor breaking through. "Whoa there, kid. Watch where you're running," he muttered, brushing away the tension with a casual flip of his mop. "Sorry," I gasped, ready to slip past him. Yet something about the weary man caught my attention as we raced on, his eyes, sharp and knowing, as if he had glimpsed the unraveling threads of our lives and understood well the chaos we were in. "Hey, wait," Arthur called back, concern creeping into his tone. "What do you know?" The janitor paused, a wry smile creeping across his face as if the burdens of the world rested lightly on his shoulders. "Sometimes it's not about what I know, but what I've seen. Watch your back. The walls have ears. And remember, dust always settles in unexpected places." His words hung in the air, thickening it with meaning, conundrums we couldn't yet fathom. I turned back, wanting to ask more, but he was already gone, vanished into the shadows. Clarity barely scratched the surface of my mind-fueled fervor as we descended further down the stairwell into the dark. The weight of uncertainty followed like a shadow, and I felt tethered to my family. Yet paralyzed by the looming specter of betrayal, we burst through a door at the bottom of the stairs, stumbling into a dank supply closet cluttered with mops and detergent. But it brought no semblance of comfort. Instead, it felt like we had stepped into a trap of our own, that next reality bleak and unforgiving. The echoes of the upper floor dissolved momentarily as silence wrapped around us, plunging us into disarray once more. My father's voice was still rattling in my ears, his plaintive questions reverberating through the chaos, even as whispers of betrayal danced on the horizon. As my heart twisted in fear and longing, I realized I had never felt so fractured and so desperately alone. No amount of our shared history could redefine our futures. "Are you with me?" my father had asked, but I had yet to answer. In a world dictated by the weight of deception, could I put my faith in him, or had the very foundation of our lives turned to dust? Before I could gather my thoughts, Andrew's phone rang, a sharp noise cutting through the stillness, a signal of urgency. My heart leapt with dread as he answered, a voice emerging from the other end, grim and foreboding. "Andrew, they're on the move. Prepare for a confrontation at the docks. We need you. Now." The air thickened as an urgency swept through me. The abyss of uncertainty yawned once more, and I realized I stood on the cusp of destiny, wildly unprepared for the choices that would unfold in the moments ahead. The life I had known was fracturing, unspooling at a dizzying pace. Outside, silence loomed like an impending storm, and whatever awaited us at those docks felt like the precipice of destruction or the birth of something new. In that moment, I glimpsed fragments of strength, a glimmer of hope amid shadows. Yet confusion reigned in my heart. Would I stand for my father and everything he represented, or would I fight against the shadows that sought to unmake us all? Breath caught in my throat. I felt the divide grow impossibly wide. The storm had only just begun. The musty air of the supply closet pressed down like a suffocating shroud, wrapping us in an electric silence that buzzed with unspoken fears. My heart raced, synapses firing wildly in response to Andrew's phone call. Each ring a reminder that the capital I had relied upon my entire life now felt like a shackle. "Prepare for a confrontation at the docks," the voice had said, thick with urgency. It was a calling that thrummed through me, vibrating against the inner turmoil that accompanied each glance toward my companions, a family man, a steadfast friend, and the shadows in my mind that dared to question everything I once believed. "What's at the docks?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper, edged with uncertainty. To Andrew's face was taut, brows knitted together as he deliberated over the implications. It's where they plan to make their move. If we don't intercept, it could unravel everything. And Claire, he faltered, glancing at Arthur, who looked as much broken as he seemed resolute. Claire? I echoed, the name like a knife in the belly of my thoughts. She's not involved in this, is she? She wouldn't. The one who spoke to her was my father's right-hand man. Victor, Arthur interjected, a tremor in his voice. She's been caught up in something much bigger than we thought. She's in danger. Just then, a soft thud echoed from the door we had entered. We all tensed, hearts hammering against our ribcages, as if preparing for a battle. It was a reminder that this was not a trap of our own making. The world outside was closing in like a vice. The door creaked open a mere inch, revealing a flicker of light and the distinct silhouette of a figure. My breath hitched as my thoughts raced. If it was someone from security, we'd be done for. In a fleeting moment of dread, I prepared to bolt, to drag Arthur and Andrew into another escape. But when the door opened a little wider, it was my older sister Celia, her features strained yet earnest. What are you all doing here? We have to move, she urged, breathless and frantic. Celia? I stepped forward, the weight of familial ties pulling me back from the brink of despair momentarily. What do you know? I overheard something disturbing in the main hall, just outside. She peered down the corridor, as if ensuring we weren't being pursued. There are reports of a possible sabotage on a shipment at the docks tonight. Your father is involved, but they're framing it as a coup. If we don't do something, they'll drag the entire family down. Heart racing, I exchanged glances with the others, anxiety mingling with determination. The chasm I had felt between us seemed to bridge slightly. She had discovered the chaos lurking beneath the surface, a shared burden that could unite our fractured family. Let's rally together, Andrew suggested, his voice firm, punctuated by a newfound sense of urgency. We don't have time to waste. In an improvised circle, a fragile thread of resolve connected us. As we made a swift plan, the stakes laid bare before us. The glamour of our upbringing felt worlds away. We were scavenging for strength amid the wreckage. Yet as we moved to slip into the neon underbelly of the evening, stealing through the shadows past the storage areas, something in me whispered for caution. The instincts warning me to watch my own back lingered still. Could we trust anyone outside this small circle? And how deep did the betrayal run? Convinced of our unity, we approached an exterior exit leading to the chaotic swirl of the street outside, where city lights battled against the gloom. But as we reached the door, Andrew paused, reflection etching lines into his face. What if we're walking into a trap? He hesitated before charging through the doorway, a wave of tension spilling into the night air. We don't have a choice. We have to find out how deep this betrayal runs. I reached for his arm, desperation mingling with impulse. Andrew, what if we're the ones being set up? What if— Stop, Celia interrupted, her voice firm as a warden's. We'll never know unless we confront this. We must trust each other in this moment. Feelings of doubt will devour us whole. With a deep breath, I nodded despite the multitude of doubts swirling in the depths of my heart. Somehow I felt that trusting an uncertain familial bond was scarier than braving the unknown outside. And just then, a figure loomed in the darkness ahead, cloaked in shadows, still and silent. My heart jump-started as the weight of uncertainty coiled tighter around my insides. Who's there? I called out, the challenge slipping from my lips like ice. But when the figure stepped into the dim light, my breath caught in my throat, freezing the moment. Claire stood before us, disheveled and wide-eyed, with an urgency written across her face that I had never seen before. The depth of the emotions swirling in that instant spun webs of trust and betrayal in equal measure. That I am here to help, she said, hands raised in surrender, fragments of panic trembling on the edges of her resolved countenance. Before I could process what her presence meant, before I could discern whether she was a beacon of hope or another cunning layer of deceit, I felt the axis of everything shifting in our favor or against it, the moment poised on the precipice of calamity, a maelstrom of secrets ready to unravel. In a blur of thoughts and emotions, one undeniable truth crystallized in the chaos. The lines between love, loyalty, and betrayal had blurred beyond comprehension, and whatever awaited us at the docks would demand nothing less than the ultimate confrontation of trust and fear. And as Claire stepped closer into the light, every breath after that felt like stepping into the depths of a storm we may never fully escape from. The dim light of the supply closet flickered as adrenaline coursed through my veins. Claire, standing before us, wide-eyed and desperate, spun a rush of conflict within me. How could I trust her when the ground beneath us felt so unstable? "What do you want?" I managed, my voice steady but strained, the air thick with uncertainty. "I know you have questions, but there's no time," she urged, her eyes darting anxiously. "At the docks, you're not just facing your father's empire. There are forces at play that can rip your family apart." Her voice quivered with an urgency that radiated through the room, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. "What forces?" Celia asked, her brows furrowing. "You need to be clear. We can't just rush into this without knowing what we're up against." Claire took a shallow breath, her composure faltering. "There's a faction within the company that's been plotting against your father. They're threatening to go public with everything, his connections, the unethical deals that put them in a position of power. If they follow through, it wouldn't just tarnish his name, it would destroy our family." A chill ran down my spine as I processed her words. Could it be true? My mind raced as I recalled my father's fierce ambition, the lengths he went to maintain control. I looked around at my siblings and Arthur, each of us grappling with the reality of our situation. "Why should we trust you?" I challenged, crossing my arms defiantly, fighting against the impulse to let her sway my decisions. "Because I'm offering you the truth," Claire responded, her voice wavering with sincerity. "I've been in your father's inner circle. I've seen the lengths he's gone to keep secrets hidden. I want to help you expose them before it's too late." That I glanced at Arthur, who met my gaze with a mixture of confusion and hope. He had been my anchor through this upheaval, and his faith in me sparked something deep within. "We need to make a decision," I said, urgency propelling my words. "We either act now or let the darkness swallow us whole." Celia nodded, her face set in resolve. "Then let's do it together. Whatever happens next, we face it as a family." With a moment of collective unity, we stepped past Claire and into the sharp reality of the night, uncertainty hanging heavily like a fog around us. As we navigated the streets toward the docks, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Arriving at the docks, we spotted a police barricade surrounded by reporters clamoring for information. My heart raced as I spotted my father in the distance, his figure commanding a group of suited men, his expression taut with fury. I felt the familiar suffocating weight of his expectations, but I also felt a surge of determination. "They're getting ready to make a deal," Claire whispered, her urgency palpable as we huddled close. "If we don't act now, it could be the end for your family's legacy." "Let's draw them out," I suggested, my voice steadier than I felt. "If we can get close enough to hear what they're planning, I can provide distraction," Claire interjected, her eyes sparkling with an intensity that made me pause. "They'll create an opportunity for you to slip past." Uncertainty clawed at me, but I nodded, trusting my gut. "Be careful." The plan set in motion, Claire darted toward the fray, while we found a vantage point behind stacks of crates. As I watched her engage, my heart pounded in rhythm with the rising tension in the air. Suddenly, a loud shout erupted from my father. The deal was under threat, tension rippling like electricity through the crowd. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his eyes scanning for betrayers among him. "Now," I urged my siblings and Arthur, moving as one towards the chaos unfolding. As we approached, every heartbeat felt like a drum heralding the truth we were about to unveil. Just as we neared, a sudden movement drew our attention. A figure emerged from the shadows, arms crossed, his face a mask of amusement. Victor, my father's right-hand man, leaned casually against a lamppost, smirk playing on his lips. "You must think you're clever, don't you?" he called, his voice dripping with disdain that I swallowed hard, fighting against mounting anger. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, stepping forward. "This isn't just about business. It's about family." Victor laughed, a harsh sound that echoed into the night. "Family? Oh, please. This is about power and money, and your father's too blinded by ambition to realize the web he's woven." But it was in that moment, something clicked within me. Desperation turned into Clarissa realization that sparked my resolve. You want to destroy us, I declared, my voice unwavering. We're stronger than you think. Before he could respond, Claire reappeared, and behind her stood a wave of police officers. She had done it rallied support against the plotting faction. We're here to investigate, she shouted, her voice ringing with determination. We have evidence of coercion and misconduct. The crowd rippled with murmurs as the officers moved in, creating a protective barrier around us. My father's panic morphed into confusion, eyes darting between the chaos and my stance. But within him lay the first tokens of understanding that this was not merely an act of rebellion but a measured response. You've had your hand in too many dirty dealings, Frank, Victor sneered, glaring at my father as the police moved closer. Time to pay the piper. The air shimmered with tension as the officers began making arrests, murmurs of agreement lighting the atmosphere among the crowd. I felt an exhilarating rush, a defiance against the shadows stretching across my life. My father's legacy built on manipulation and deceit was being challenged in this very moment. In that torrent of chaos, as I stood alongside my siblings and Arthur, I realized this was the moment I'd longed for, the moment we would choose our path, shatter the shackles of expectation, and step into the light of our own truths. My heart raced with unshed tears and newfound hope as I met my father's gaze. The distance between us began to close, weaving together fragments of redemption and possibility. Together, we'll rebuild, Dad, I said softly, a plea rising from the depths of my heart. But this time, let's do it right. His expression shifted, the gentle tendrils of emotion breaking through the rigid facade, and for the first time in so long, the flicker of something deeper danced in his gaze, a testament that perhaps we could reclaim not only our family but our truths, woven together amid the shadows. As the old world fell behind us, one truth emerged strong and clear. Sometimes, from the ashes of deceit, we find the courage to step into the light. Together, united by our stories, an unbreakable bond against all odds. And in that moment of overwhelming clarity, I felt my heart ignite with a fierce love for those by my side, a love strong enough to face whatever storms lay ahead. This was just the beginning of something beautiful, and despite the uncertainty that lingered on the horizon, one thing was certain. We would rise from the wreckage and forge our destinies anew. Let's go home, I whispered, knowing our journey had only just begun, and hand in hand, we faced the dawn of a new tomorrow.